Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we deliver the shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we are undertaking a pretty immersive exploration of Richard Matheson's novel, The Incredible Shrinking Man. And this isn't just, standard science fiction. It really feels like a profound and often terrifying study of identity, masculinity, and just sort of the human scale against this vast, indifferent universe.
Exactly. That indifference is key, I think. When you really dig into the sources, what you realize is Matheson takes something like a personal crisis, losing a job, a marriage failing, financial trouble, and he makes it physically, brutally literal.
Yeah.
Our protagonist, Scott Carey, he starts out as this, typical American guy, 6 feet tall, but he's basically doomed to diminish at this fixed, relentless rate, 1/7 of an inch. Every single day.
The fixed rate it's kind of the structural genius of the book, isn't it? Because it just removes any element of chance or, hope for some miracle cure. It replaces it with this cold mathematical dread. So we're essentially tracking Scott Carey through, 17 chapters or so?
At least, yeah.
Charting this slow, ongoing erosion of self, where the familiar world, his home, it just becomes increasingly alien and threatening.
And that's our mission today, really, to synthesize this whole pretty harrowing journey for you. We need to go beyond just like a plot summary and really explore the narrative, the deep psychological stuff, and the symbols that make it clear why this book is still such a potent piece of, existential horror, why it still resonates, decades later.
Okay, let's unpack this descent then, because the first stage of the horror, it doesn't involve like monsters under the bed initially. It's agonizingly mundane. It starts in the doctor's office, doesn't it? And like the bank account. Scott and his wife Lou, they first feel this creeping dread during visits to Dr. Branson. And it's initially for really common things, right? Like simple weight loss, maybe some bowing of the legs. Nothing too alarming at first.
Well, alarming maybe to them, but medically baffling. What's crucial here is the sheer, almost frantic effort they put in before they even consider the impossible. The whole medical system is thrown into chaos, trying to figure this out, trying to categorize it.
Right.
They chase down every recognizable explanation. X-rays, endless blood tests, bone surveys. They're desperately searching for a pituitary tumor or cancer, anything really that fits into the box of modern medicine.
And this is where that sense of modern security, the idea that resources can fix anything, just completely falls apart. And it's costly, isn't it? Both emotionally and, financially.
Oh, yeah. Scott had his life pretty much mapped out based on that classic American foundation. A GI loan, insurance policies, plans for a business partnership with his brother Marty. The sources really emphasize how the hospitalization and all the tests immediately rack up thousands of dollars. That financial worry gets layered right on top of the physical terror. It just dissolves the life structure he'd so carefully built.
That loss of control over his financial future, over his security, that seems like the first real crack in his psyche.
It is. And the diagnosis, when it finally comes, the book frames it as the discovery around chapter 8 or 9. It's almost, comically absurd in how specific it is.
How so?
Well, Scott's suffering from a negative nitrogen balance, basically, losing more nitrogen than he takes in, and this imbalance of creatinine, phosphorus, and calcium. And the medical team traces the cause to this, 1 in a million fluke.
Okay.
An insect spray that was hideously altered by radiation. This unique poison, it destroyed his pituitary's ability to maintain growth and started this rapid, active decalcification of his bones. He's literally dissolving.
Yeah. So that's it then. That's the definitive end of hope. No cure possible.
Pretty much. The treatments they try, like ACTH administration, they're completely useless against this kind of catabolic breakdown. He's just watching himself chemically dissolve day by day. And this profound, unfixable helplessness, it poisons his character. It pushes him into what the text calls a period of furies.
Furies? Like anger?
Yeah, but it's described as a strengthless temper. It's born entirely out of fear, out of impotence. He lashes out constantly, especially at Lou.
Right.
He refuses a newspaper offer to sell his story. He gets furious at Lou for, prioritizing security and money over his dignity, yelling something like, "What would you like me to do? Turn myself into a public freak."
So it's this kind of belligerence, but it's really a defense mechanism, trying to assert the masculinity his body is betraying.
Exactly. He's fighting to hold on to that role, but the world, it doesn't really indulge his rage, does it?
No. And this destructive attitude, it goes on until his brother Marty steps in.
Right. Marty basically tells Scott he needs to stay home until he's, quote, fixed up. and he cuts his pay down to this humiliating $50 a week.
Ouch.
Yeah. Marty's actions are maybe practical from his point of view, but they're utterly crushing for Scott. It confirms his loss of value as a provider. I mean, $50 a week, that can't even begin to cover the family's needs or the medical bills. It's really the final nail in the coffin of his financial identity.
And you see how that financial and emotional strain just immediately bleeds into the marriage dynamic, destroying it.
Instantly. As he shrinks, the physical difference becomes this huge psychological barrier. Think about that moment when he hits 5'8", 4 inches shorter than Lou.
Who's 5'8" herself?
Right, so suddenly he's forced to look straight across or even up into his own wife's eyes. That simple physical act of looking up, it symbolizes the total reversal of their power dynamic. It's devastating.
And the physical decline just strips away every symbol of his traditional societal masculinity. You mentioned the wedding ring.
Yeah, that's so painful. His finger gets too thin to wear it safely. So first he wears it on a chain around his neck. Then eventually he retires it completely, places this, great gold loop, which he sees as the very roots of his marriage, into a dollhouse drawer later on. The weight of their union, quite literally, is physically too much for him to carry anymore.
God, that's bleak.
And it leads straight into the tragic breakdown of intimacy. Lou, she's trying to maintain affection, attempts to kiss him. But Scott, in his headspace, he perceives her attempt not as actual desire, but as loving pity for a poor creature who desired her.
Oh, man.
That realization just devastates him. He feels puny and absurd, a ludicrous midget. And the real horror is in how slow it all is. The mundane stuff, eating, sleeping, caring for their daughter Beth, it all continues day by day, while his relationship, his whole sense of self is just altered day by day while he shrank.
That distinction feels really important. Lou is trying to love the man she married, but that man is being systematically erased, right?
Yeah.
Leaving behind this terrified, angry stranger who feels completely infantilized.
Exactly. He feels like a child. And that feeling, that psychological defeat, feeling like a boy who needs placating it, gets cemented by this small but horrifying moment. Therese, the neighborhood girl, She just picks him up like a boy and places him on a chair. Just trying to be helpful, maybe. But this act of unknowing dominance, treating him like this fragile little object, that's the breaking point for Scott. He abandons the whole pretense of normalcy. He just retreats entirely. Down to the cellar?
And the cellar, which was probably just a dark, musty, utilitarian space before.
Yeah.
It immediately transforms
Yeah.
into this immense, hostile wilderness.
Totally. The source material does a beautiful job conveying this perspective shock. Suddenly, the entire physics of his world is terrifying. It's completely changed.
It's not relative anymore, it's absolute. You mentioned the math.
Yeah, think about it. A 12-inch step, something you wouldn't even notice before, now demands this enormous effort. It becomes the equivalent of 150 feet for his tiny frame.
Wow.
A simple pin, dropped and forgotten on the floor, it's now the size of a knight's lance. A discarded broom handle becomes this gargantuan obstacle, like 10 times as long as he was. The cellar isn't a room anymore. It's a hostile planet where every surface is uneven and every object is a potential avalanche or weapon.
So where does he even live down there? How does he survive?
He makes his new life under the water heater. It's huge, radiates heat. He sleeps on a rectangular sponge wrapped in a torn handkerchief. Survival becomes this intense, high-stakes engineering problem.
Right.
He has to meticulously measure himself every single day on a wooden ruler propped against these huge yellow lawnmower wheels. He has to construct ladders out of string, use thread as rope. He realizes this former suburban basement is now this primitive environment demanding constant, ceaseless labor just to exist.
And the struggle for basics, like food and water, must be immediate and just dire.
Oh, absolutely. It underscores the cruelty of the physical laws he's now governed by. We get this excruciating detail about the cracker disaster.
Okay.
His carefully saved food source, these crackers, they get ruined by water dripping from a faulty kitchen drain pipe upstairs. He discovers the sickening stash of moldy, water-soaked crackers.
Oh, gross.
It's the psychological impact of that detail that really hits, He's not just running low on food, he's literally scraping green mold off these soggy crumbs, gagging at the smell, finding the taste nauseating, but he's desperate enough to keep going.
Just to survive.
Yeah. After an hour of this frantic, sickening work, he only salvages enough food for maybe 2 days. It just illustrates the exponential scale of the labor involved in maintaining the most basic bodily function. He's working harder and harder just to survive on less and less.
And water. Is that just as bad?
Equally dangerous, maybe more so.
Yeah.
To get water, he has to climb this seemingly endless thread up to the water tank to reach a thimble, which to him is now a giant vat.
A thimble?
Yeah, and we see this near-death experience where the thimble tips over just as he fills it. The water floods him, pours over him. He has to make this rapid, chilling climb completely naked up this 10-foot thread just to avoid drowning in a thimble full of water.
Unbelievable.
And the instant shivering he feels forces this realization that even something like pneumonia is now a fatal risk. The mundane cold could kill him faster than any monster down there.
Which brings us to the monsters.
Yeah.
The monsters of the mundane, as you call them. These threats that represent his existential fears.
Exactly. There are three really distinct threats that embody different facets of his fear. We have to start with the black widow spider.
Okay, the spider.
Matheson really imbues this creature with this intellectual, symbolic menace. It's way beyond just a scary bug. It's described as having terrible patience, a highly developed nervous system, possessing memory. Its venom is 12 times as deadly as a rattlesnake's.
So it's intelligent. Almost.
Almost. Scott sees it as every unknown terror in the world fused into wriggling, poison-jawed horror. It represents all those existential anxieties, the things he can no longer outrun or rationalize away. It feels like intelligent, patient malice waiting for him.
Okay, that's terrifying. How does that contrast with the cat?
The cat is different. That's the primal, animalistic threat. It's this gigantic, totally oblivious predator. Scott sees it with green lantern eyes, spear-like whiskers, and these scythe-clawed paws. There's an encounter while Scott is desperately clinging to a straw ladder. It leaves him paralyzed by absolute horror.
So the cat isn't malicious, just big.
Exactly. The cat doesn't hate him. It's just massive, unknowing power that views him as maybe an interesting little snack. It embodies the raw, animalistic indifference of nature itself. It could kill him without even thinking about it.
And the third threat is the humans. Lou and Marty and Beth.
Yeah, the giant humans themselves, they become monsters in their own way. They're monstrously tall, their fingers seem as thick as redwood trees, their shoes are like elephants that never were. They are this constant, unknowing danger.
Unknowing, that's the key.
Right. They aren't cruel, not intentionally, but they're colossal figures who are conscious only of smallness and movement. Scott's whole perspective is radically altered. When Lou crouches down to look for him, the visual distortion is grotesque. He sees her face only in pieces, a huge eye here, an enormous nose there. He sees her features the way a billboard hanger might see the features of the woman's face he pasted up.
Wow.
He realizes they inhabit totally separate, mutually incomprehensible realities now. They can't understand his world, and he can barely comprehend theirs as anything other than terrifyingly huge.
It's such an effective horror mechanism. Because the source of his terror isn't some external invasion or, a mutation in the usual sci-fi sense. It's the sheer scale and indifference of the place he used to call home.
Yeah.
He's literally in exile in his own basement.
Precisely. But, the journey through the cellar, as absolutely grueling as it is, paradoxically forces this strange kind of psychological clarity in Scott. He moves through the panic and the misery, and he finds this crucial turning point when he just has to face the total absurdity of his situation.
Absurdity. How does that manifest?
It happens right after that trauma with the water heater flooding his bed, ruining his crackers again. He's sitting there soaked, miserable, and he just reaches this point of total hysterics. He starts laughing uncontrollably. He's throwing soggy cracker balls at the water heater.
Right.
And he has this realization, when things got so bad they were absurd, you couldn't take them straight anymore. You had to laugh or crack. Accepting that absurdity, that's the beginning of his internal growth, oddly enough.
So laughing is a kind of breakthrough.
It's a profound shift. He stops what he calls running mentally, running from life, from his fears, from his responsibilities, and he makes this conscious decision to act alive. He resolves to stop being just a passive victim and become a student of his own unique plight.
How does he do that?
He decides to write his life story. He starts seeing it not just as this horrible tragedy, but as a rare thing, something of potential value, a journey to be studied and overcome. He thinks, I'm going to tear it apart, see what there is to see. His internal stature, his sense of self, starts growing precisely as his physical body continues to shrink.
That's fascinating. And this philosophical shift, does it lead anywhere externally? You mentioned an encounter.
Yeah, it immediately brings him this moment of, well, physical and emotional validation that contrasts so vividly with the complete failure of his relationship with Lou. This is the pivotal, though temporary, encounter with Clarice at the carnival.
Ah, Clarice, this sideshow performer.
Yes, a sideshow midget. And this scene provides the only real momentary respite from his physical alienation in the whole book, pretty much. Clarice offers them the one thing he desperately needs: proportionality.
Proportionality.
Yeah. In her small trailer world, a world he describes as his very own. The chairs and the couch don't swallow him up. His feet actually touch the floor when he sits down. That tiny detail feet touching the floor, it restores this basic sense of grounded normalcy. And crucially, it restores his sense of functional masculinity. He fits again.
And Clarice herself.
She represents shared isolation. She's a woman who genuinely understands his dilemma because she's lived it in a different way. Their connection is immediate, it's intense, it's driven by this mutual, almost desperate, heart-demanding hunger. And Scott whispers that desperate, aching wish in her arms. God, to be a man again. With Clarice, he's validated, not pitied. He finds this reciprocal desire that Lou, trapped by her own pity and fear, just couldn't offer the shrinking man he'd become.
But he doesn't stay with her, does he?
No. Duty, or maybe more accurately, his worry about Lou's potential distress or fear, compels him to return home. The internal conflict is sharp. He actually thinks, why couldn't I just stay with Clarice? It wouldn't matter to Lou, she'd be glad to get rid of him.
Which just highlights how broken the marriage is.
Completely. And when he gets back and tries to explain the validation he found, tries to share that moment, Lou's reaction just confirms his fears and shatters everything. She says dismissively, "You mean that midget in the sideshow?"
Oof, reducing Clarice to a spectacle.
Exactly, invalidating the only truly human, connected moment Scott had experienced in months. It's brutal.
So, the marriage is effectively over. Formally over. And this is symbolized not just by that emotional gulf, but by the dollhouse.
Yeah, the dollhouse. Lou buys this deluxe dollhouse for him. It's this concession that's simultaneously meant to be helpful, probably, but also deeply infantilizing.
It's a brilliant symbol, isn't it?
It really is. It's miniature, yes,
Yeah.
which fits him. But it's uncomfortable. It lacks any real function. There are no springs in the bed, no working plumbing, no actual appliances. It's a prop. And Scott insists it be pushed against the wall for privacy. Yet Lou, in her sort of giant benevolence, leaves the missing fourth wall open so she can peer in. Even in his private miniature world, he lacks true autonomy. He's still basically a specimen under observation, living in this tiny, gilded cage.
And the final explicit end of the marriage happens here too, right? With the ring.
Yes. This is where he takes off his wedding ring, that great gold loop he saw as the roots of his marriage, and he places the now too heavy object into the dollhouse dresser drawer. It's done, and then...
He tries to replace intimacy with this pathetic substitute. He attempts to sleep beside Beth's old doll, one with blue eyes that click open when he turns her on her side. The experience is just one of crushing, unadulterated loneliness next to this lifeless, unfeeling substitute for human connection.
God, it just keeps getting worse for him. Does he try to escape the cellar at this point?
His situation spirals towards total isolation. Lou and Marty start the process of moving their belongings out of the house. Scott, now smaller than his own thumb, attempts this frantic escape.
He uses his rudimentary survival tool, this thread hook he made, to climb onto Marty's shoe as Marty is walking around. He's beating his tiny fists desperately against the leather.
Can they hear him? See him?
No. His screams, which were once these powerful furies, are completely unheard. To them, if they noticed anything, he'd just be a pale white insect. Marty's shoe swings him around, he loses his grip, and he falls. Completely unseen, completely unnoticed.
And then the final abandonment.
Yeah, the final terrible stroke.
Yeah.
Marty and Lou move everything out and they lock the cellar door behind them. The very last chance of rescue, the tiny clue he left behind the thread and hook caught on Marty's trousers, is casually erased. Beth, sitting in the car, just plucks the thread and hook from Marty's trouser legs, puts it in her pocket, and instantly forgets about it.
Oh my God.
Scott is now trapped. Beneath the house, forgotten, sealed off completely from the world he once knew. Total isolation. So after that final, failed escape attempt, Scott just descends into this state of total apathy. What he recognizes himself as absolute negation. He reaches a point where he can't even recall the face of Catherine, that teenager he was obsessed with earlier in his decline.
He's just given up.
Pretty much. He walks around the cellar, which is now his entire universe, thinking, beyond the simple plane of bodily function, there was nothing. He's in this profound state of mind where he fully expects death, and he's no longer even resisting it. It feels inevitable.
Yet, the book doesn't end there, does it? In that total darkness, that point of absolute physical nothingness, he experiences something else.
He does, an unexpected moment of, well, transcendence, maybe. He hears something, faint, distant, barely audible through the ceiling boards above him.
What is it?
It's Brahms' symphony playing upstairs. And remember, earlier in his shrinking, loud noises were physically painful, like the clatter of a dish sounding like a knife jab at his brain. But this soft, distant sound, it's different. It's pure connection.
Connection, how?
He realizes it was still the same world then, and he was still a part of it. He understands that Lou, gigantic and remote upstairs, and he, now incredibly minute, are listening to the exact same beauty. This philosophical clarity arrives precisely when he's reduced to a mote and insignificance. The physical world has utterly betrayed him, but the spiritual, the intellectual world, that remains shared. Somehow.
So he finds meaning even then.
He recognizes that survival, even when you're reduced to practically nothing, is fundamentally a function of individual will, of purpose. And he bellows this final defiant challenge at the universe. He accepts his fate, but not defeat. He shouts, "I fought a good fight."
Wow.
And his subsequent laughter. It's described with this incredible image. The faintest, icy sprinkling of sound against the vast, dark earth. It's the ultimate transformation, really. He went from being this man fueled by strengthless temple and fury over a $50 pay cut to becoming this philosophical survivor, finding purpose in the sheer tenacity of his own existence, even at the smallest scale imaginable.
So if we try to synthesize the enduring themes for you, the listener, the central one has got to be the changing definition of masculinity, right?
Absolutely. Scott loses physical prowess, the ability to protect, the ability to provide all those traditional markers. He's forced to find worth instead in philosophical acceptance and internal resilience. The external markers of manhood failed him completely, but the internal man, the self, somehow survived, even grew.
It's also just a definitive exploration of existential horror, isn't it? The world isn't actively malevolent, it's not trying to kill him. It's just indifferent, utterly indifferent.
And that transformation of domestic life, his own home, into this hostile wilderness is such a horrifying comment on human fragility. His house cat, his wife, even a faulty drain pipe. These become the new gods of his world, massive, unknowing forces that dictate his survival.
And finally, there's that power of perspective. His physical shrinkage forces this almost exponential growth in his perception, his internal life.
Yeah, he starts the novel worried about insurance policies and GI loans, standard stuff. He ends it as this micro-survivor, measuring his life in cracker crumbs and string ladders, but somehow finding profound meaning in that microcosm.
It really is a remarkable piece of literature, precisely because it makes that internal struggle so visible, so visceral, through the physical transformation.
Exactly. The questions it raises about what actually constitutes a meaningful existence. That's why it stays with you. And it's maybe best epitomized by this line from the text, something Scott wrestles with. What he wanted to know was this. Was he a separate, meaningful person? Was he an individual? Did he matter? Was it enough just to survive?
And that question, whether survival alone can actually confer meaning, that's the philosophical knot Matheson really leaves us, the readers, to untangle. We've seen how Scott's world, from his wedding ring right down to a thimble, fundamentally shifted. Makes you think, doesn't it? Consider what elements of your own world, your living room, maybe your pet, even just the noise of your heating system, turning on what would instantly become terrifying, alienating, if your fundamental frame of reference were suddenly stripped away like his was. What internal resources would you even rely on when all your external ones completely fail?